All right.
Oh, where's my hat? Fuck.
Is it downstairs?
I don't know. It's fine. Do you hear the people sing the song of angry men?
All right. Well, there's no one in the chat yet, so
Yeah,
that's pretty normal.
that makes sense.
We are super dark, though. Let me...
We are dramatic.
Oh, is that any better?
Yeah, a little.
Whatever.
They do not need to be able to see us as much. So.
It's literally just us bullshitting.
How's your workload going today?
I'm done for the day.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Oh, hi! Archie's here. Hi, Archie!
Oh, that was fast. Hi there.
Is our new time better or worse for you, Archie? It's on a delay. So, it's going to take him a minute to see our... See?
Yep. But, yeah. So you're done with work for the day. Mm-hmm. So it's basically just me catching up on D&D stuff and everything. And Archie, this is the D&D room.
Yeah. I would show you the rest of it, but I have took it over
right
for work. And so there's just like a giant monitor right there.
Yeah. It's a little witchy cottage vibe to it. Oop, it doesn't really matter to me either. Okay. Sounds good. Well then, thank you for being accommodating.
My Archie, to tell you a little bit about us, because we don't know where we're going with today, my dad is a professor, and his
Hours
change every semester. Well, they're actually on quarters. So Fridays he typically has off, but we had our friend's daughter on Fridays, and so we rearranged things so the Friday could be the more consistent schedule going forward. So thank you, Michael and Amanda, for being so accommodating.
Right. I did have a rough idea of what we could do this particular episode, though.
Okay.
And now this is last minute, and I know that Archie, you're pretty new to the whole DMing side of things. And I know they have, like, the starter set, I believe. Like, the Essentials kit.
I believe he's new to D&D in general. Correct me if I'm wrong, Archie, but he was also trying to DM.
Right. So, I figure that going over the books that are available and talk about what they provide might actually be beneficial to you. And what's included in those books. Now, the Essentials and Dragon of Icesphere Castle are these lovely group of books.
Yes, incredibly no.
Yeah. Okay. And just confirm that you have, I believe you did Dragon of Icesphere Peak, and you did not get Essentials. Yes. Okay. So that provides you an amazing starting point with the Icespire Peak book, which is great, and the Essentials rule booklet includes the first 6 levels. So that is an amazing starting point. It provides you nice, bite-sized adventures, and is just a good way to root a group of players to work with. So, great starting point. Now, progressing, the first thing that you should probably look into if things continue to grow is probably a player's handbook, which has a ton of spells in it, and it's necessary to run most of the other published material, and a monster manual.
He has the online player's handbook.
There you go. And for DMing, though, monster manual is the go-to. Even more so than the player's handbook. The monster manual has literally everything you could possibly want. It has different creatures that you can repurpose and turn into traps. yeah, the DM provides a story, and one of our biggest tools for throwing at the characters is throwing monsters at them. So this is, I use it every session. The DMG, you might think that would be on one of the first books you get, but it's only really necessary if you want to start breaking things apart and putting things back together. If you want to start making custom rules, or if you're planning to use a lot of or canon magic items, the canon magic items are in the DMG. But except for that, the DMG is not necessarily the most important tool to get in your catalog immediately. I definitely recommend the other two first, and a DMG if you want to do a lot of custom stuff. So, after that, D&D has like 25 other published material books, and they can be broken up into like 3 big categories. They have splat books, which are just books with a whole bunch of interesting rules, additional like character options and whatnot. Like she's playing a Spore Druid. The Spore Druid is not in the player's handbook, so she either would need to buy that from D&D Beyond or buy one of the various splat books that has it.
If I don't know if you know this much about D&D Beyond or not. I know you're not Sam Riegel. If someone like me comes to a DM and says, I want to play a Spore Druid,
Yep.
and the DM says, well, it's in this book, could I buy just the rules for the Spore Druid, or do I have to buy the full book?
You can buy just the rules for the Spore Druid.
Good to know.
Good
to know.
That is beneficial, and it's a great way to just be inexpensive while playing exactly what you want to play.
Yeah. Because I feel like some people find the barrier to entry with D&D very overwhelming with all the books and...
Yeah, no, that's fair. Also, if a player wants to play like a Spore Druid and nobody's really wanting to hash out a lot of funds, you can just repurpose something already in the player's handbook and just make it more Spore-like. Like, just make a transmutation wizard, but whenever he's using transmutation, make it a little bit more spory instead of more arcane vibing.
You get the individual rules from D&D Beyond, right?
The individual rules for the very specific class is D&D Beyond, and then I believe it's something like $4 to $5, probably less. But I don't use D&D Beyond. I am technologically inept, but I know you can definitely buy the individual specific rules from them.
I love you dearly, but technology is not your strong suit.
That's correct.
That's actually one of the big reasons why his other game isn't live streaming, is because I watch our spawn during it, and he can barely start the Google Meet for that game.
Right.
So.
I currently run 2 games. I run the game that you watch every week, and I have a bi-weekly 4-hour slot game with players I've been playing with for years at this point.
Two of them for years. The other 2, the game started right before the pandemic started, and I kind of miss it because like we would have like a whole like wives and girlfriends and other kids would come, and it was like we had like a little community built around D&D, and it was really, really cool. And it doesn't feel so much like that anymore. The friends whose kids were watching, we're still really close to them, but I haven't talked to anyone else from the group since.
It's really frustrating. It is a great way to force people to interact and form a community. Okay. But yeah, D&D is a great way to just force people to interact. It also depends on... this will have to be a different topic, like different types of games and what you can do based around the time slots and the energy invested. because a 4-hour game every week, we made it like a community event day. It was weird. But we can't do that with a 2-hour slot every week. It has a very different vibe.
It does. And I mean, the people in it have a very different vibe out of the 3 players.
Yeah.
Out of the 4 of us, we're the only ones married with a kid.
Also, the 2-hour time slot game is very more flamboyant. Like, let's kill the mayor. Let's do all these absurd things. And my other group is like, we have to kill the gods. And it's very like...
The other group has their own group chat that, like, goes on and on and on. It's kind of funny. If you hear a small person in the background, it is because our spawn is downstairs with my dad. So
and he's loud.
He's very loud.
But yeah, there's going back to the books.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. So the ones I use most often are Player's Handbook, Monster Manual. After that, the cluster books I use are like the Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Tasha's Cauldron is one that I would add to that list. And Mordekainen's Tome of Foes and Volo's Guide. Basically the guidebooks. They provide a nice general purpose of monsters, player info. It's just nice mix of rules that are useful for both players and DMs. I use them all the time. Highly recommend them, especially if you're trying to expand out to the standard core rule books. It allows you as a DM to have a book that's good to hand over to the player. Be like, hey, you can play these options. Because in Volo's Guide, it actually includes rules for playing like goblins and bugbears and Yuan-Ti and all these monstrous things, which are so much fun, except they aren't in the player's handbook. And so having more players' options while having more monsters is lovely to have in the same book.
I finally found cups that worked with this cup holder.
How novel. My the table in this room was made by one of my players to play D&D on. Hey, he does?
He watches the edited version.
Howie! Yes. So this is for Howie. Thank you for the table. Still use it. Love it. Thank you. It's a great little hexagonal table. And it's a perk.
I'm sorry. I can't stay on subject, so
I've met
continue.
you.
I'm trying.
So outside the core books, there's the splat books, which have the various rules in them. And then the third group of books are the adventure books. Like Icewind Dale, Descent into Avernus, Curse of Strahd, the adventure books. Those are amazing for what they are, which are very, very chiseled experiences. I would put the Dragonbite Spear Castle and all the sets in there as well. They give you a very clean adventure arc. They give you a very interesting dynamic for the story, and I've used them in some fashion forever. The last campaign I did before these two started was a combination of Rise of Tiamat and Out of the Abyss. So it was basically the Lords of Hell, the Abyss were rising up, and Tiamat was using this opportunity to try and conquer the multiverse. It was a really, really long campaign. But I basically just used major elements from both of those adventures, created this interesting tale together, and my players loved it. It is a nice, easy-to-use experience, and it provides all the information you need to run it. They do reference things in the DMG, the Player's Handbook, and the Monster Manual, though. So if you intend to use one of those modules, it's probably a good idea to have those, unless you're using a kit like the Essentials kit. I do love the adventures. They are very focused, though. So the moment that your players decide to go, I don't want to go into hell. I know that this is Descent to Avernus, but I want to open up a bakery instead. It doesn't really help you with that particular type of deviation in the adventure, but except for the random frayings that players do, they are amazing experiences. They're like watching a movie, really nicely well defined. It doesn't provide you tools to deviate strongly, but it does provide you great material in a particular field.
Where would the Acquisitions Incorporated book go?
That is in the next cluster of books.
Oh boy, I love Acking.
Yes. If you like watching D&D, Acquisitions Incorporated is the only D&D show I actually recommend.
I want to get an Acking tattoo. I love Jim Dark Magic. I want the AI.
Yeah. That's the vibe I actually wanted our live show to kind of hit.
I told John to watch Acking, and he did.
That's good.
However, they have a lot of inappropriate jokes, and we had to cut that down.
But yeah, Acquisitions Incorporated, totally amazing. The first couple episodes are really rough because they're rules heavy in an older edition of D&D. But then their absurdities really kicked in and they got mad. It's lovely. What's Archie saying? I can't...
Archie hasn't said anything. I will call your attention to the chat when you need to.
Thank you.
I am here to
I'm
monitor.
blind, so.
I'm just like throwing lowballs at you.
All right.
If I think you want
Now, in terms of adventures, I love Descent to Avernus. Amazing theme. Has motorcycles. I love that metal vibe. I actually love the Icewind Dale, the newest adventure book. It has some really easy to consume segmented adventures in it, and it provides you a nice arc, provides you information about the town. It is extremely easy to pick up, read, and just use, which is how these books should be written. So I hope that they maintain that level of flavor going forward. Now, that's not the only one by any means.
Archie asked, he said, I love watching D&D, but I never know where to start or how to play smoothly. Bit of a vague question, sorry, but I just get flustered and confused. So
that is very common.
I know you were trying to DM your friends. Have you played with someone else DMing? Like an experienced DM before?
Oh yeah, that matters a lot. It's easier to learn by playing, but if you're literally trying to create a game cold cloth, it is hard.
Apparently we're encoding too much information.
It's what we do. Now, I know that you had some confusion around combat specifically. Has watching our game and seeing how combat plays out been helpful? Is there anything that happens during combat that we could expand more on to help explain it for you guys?
One of the things that we do really want to do with Holy Hops is help make it more accessible to people to start playing. And kind of, if they've been interested, be able to learn by watching what we're doing. So...
if there's not something that we're not explaining well enough, we want to be able to do that better.
And Archie said, no, never. Nobody around me has ever played, and I just wanted to start off, and nobody else would DM.
Okay. Personal opinion, DMing is the best option.
I hate it.
It's fine. I only DM now. It is a good problem to have. As you practice and enjoy and actually get into the craft a little bit, it gets easier for sure. My first campaign was garbage. It just is. All creative works, whenever you first start off something new, you try something, you try to make it as best as you can, and it flops. just because you don't know the proper brush strokes, you don't know the proper high notes that you need to emphasize, things just get cluttered. And that's okay. You learn, you want to improve, and you keep moving. So, the fact that you're even willing to try is half the battle.
He said, our game is very helpful, but it's hard to apply what you learned from watching D&D.
Practice makes perfect, and I play a lot.
I mean,
so. But
Caleb's a hard person to judge this because he literally grew up playing D&D.
I've been playing since I was 10, so yeah.
So there's that. I didn't start playing D&D until college. Caleb was my first DM.
Anyway.
So
way to make that weird.
That's what I do. So like the one time I tried my hand at DMing, I literally gave up like 5 minutes in because even though it was a pre-made campaign, it was incredibly overwhelming. So I do really feel you there. You almost have to like, if I were to try it again, I would actually like practice beforehand, like in the mirror, like I would for a presentation.
For brand new DMs, even more so than any of this book knowledge, which comes later, is focus on telling one adventure story. Don't focus on even the like in the book that you have, in Dragon of Icespear Castle. In the adventure, you give the players like a quest on like a quest board that they go on adventures to consume. I wouldn't even give them those options. I would read through the one adventure you actually intend to run them through, like Butterskull Ranch.
That's a fun one.
Yeah. Give them the basic information, like some rancher in town is just shaking. Be like, some orcs just took over a ranch and I don't know what to do about it. Please, we'll give you gold. Just get us a ranch back. Give them as simple of a thread to go off of as possible. Tell them that this is where they need to go.
No matter what anybody says, railroading is not a bad thing if you're not ready to handle not railroading.
Right. I'm not even sure that you've even heard the term railroading, but that and sandbox are not mutually exclusive. You can use both to different degrees. But that is advanced theory. Don't worry about it. Just focus on getting people to the table and providing them a good time.
My point was, you can make them stay on task.
Yes.
Even if they're coming in being like, wow, D&D is such an open world to play with. No, your game, you are following a path. Nothing exists except to drive them back to that path. Oh, he just asked what railroading is, so that's fair.
Yeah. Railroading is trying to force them down a particular train of thought.
You're keeping them on the tracks.
Yes. A train is on one single path and really isn't planned to deviate at all. It is a negative term in the hobby that really shouldn't have any negative connotations tied to it, in my personal opinion. But don't worry about it. It's irrelevant. In terms of new DMs, I recommend that you use this adventure, open it up, read through the adventure you actually intend to run them through a couple times. Like back to the Butterskull Ranch example. Read through it, make sure you understand what the mithril chainmail is that you might be rewarding them. Keep a good idea of who the bad guys are, maybe read through their information. Like the Butterskull Ranch uses a lot of orcs, so I'd definitely make sure I would read the orc stat block once. Then once I read the adventure twice, read through the orcs at least once, you should have a good idea of what's supposed to happen. And then you can just focus on telling the story. Now, in terms of getting the players comfortable, that's a whole different can of worms. Are you using pre-gen characters, or did you try to have them roll-up characters themselves. I'm a giant fan of pre-gens, especially with newbies. So, did you try to have them go through character creation, which is daunting?
Seems to be about a 45-second delay. So.
Okay. Well, we can wait on that. And then after we talk about the adventures, which are great, we can talk about the last category, which is the settings, which is kind of the inverse of the adventure. Oh, that's actually a great way to bring up railroading versus sandbox, since it's the dynamic between the two. It's brilliant. Mm-hmm. Is it brisk?
It's brisk and a little bit of strawberry gin and a little bit of the honey. And then
Okay.
a lot of the Kraken.
Oh,
I made you a
yay.
strawberry sweet tea.
Thank you.
Like I said, though, you're really good. They made their own, and it went well, I think.
Oh, good. Having them invest in their characters is great. Character creation is probably one of the biggest hurdles between getting a player into the game and not. So,
I find it
It's
amazing
rough.
the number of people that we've met who have not played D&D for years or have never actually gotten to play D&D, who have a character that they've always wanted to play.
that's fair.
And, like, either they have them written up or they have
The
concept in their head and they just want to bring it to life. And that's actually, like, part of what got your first game going. Is we met our friend Michael at a Halloween party, and he had one of these characters that he, like, for years had worked on and wanted to play, and was really one of the reasons we were able to get more people together to do it. So, which made us really happy, because before that, Caleb and I helped start a club in college for anime and gaming. And so we were virtually gaming with the guys from that after we graduated up until Klaus was born. And
even though we're back to virtual gaming due to America still being in the middle of quarantine, I hate it. I hate it with a passion that burns hotter than the fire of 1,000 suns.
Unfortunately, this game's going to be virtual for a bit, because cases are climbing here, and with the holidays and everything,
Things are going to get
we
squirrely.
just wanted to make sure everyone could visit how they wanted to visit without having to worry about D&D. So our office is not having people in it, and we're not going to meet in person, but that's okay.
Yep. But
a lot less goes wrong on the virtual ones. The quality's not as good, but there's a lot less technical difficulties.
right. But yeah, I definitely prefer in-person games because it's, I don't know, I am not a people person, but I like having people around me to share this story with. It's more personable, less sterile. Like at the Acquisitions Incorporated games. Half the magic of the Acquisitions Incorporated games, which I highly recommend,
Green flame!
comes from their audience participation and their dynamics around each other. They recently did a quarantine game.
It wasn't the same.
It was soulless. It was weird.
Well, it's also their energy together, because energy doesn't come across quite the same way virtually. Like the like table communication, the eye-to-eye table communication is very different, because you can't, like, I can look at the camera and hope that, like, John or Meg knows I'm, like, looking at them, sending them a weird facial expression, whereas I make weird facial expressions at the two of them all the time. But I have to turn to them in the room, so.
Yeah.
Can you hear our child in the background?
He's so discreet. But what were we talking about? We were talking about adventures.
Mm-hmm. You were going to do railroading versus sandboxing in the settings books.
So the adventure books are the more railroady of the two. Again, that's a very stream cut adventure with little deviation. The antithesis of that are the campaign books, like the Eberron Rising from the Last War, Acquisitions Incorporated.
Can I see everyone?
Sure.
If Pippin dies, I'm playing an artificer. That's how Caleb's going to keep her alive.
Critical Role now has a campaign book out. Basically, as opposed to a book focusing on a single story, it gives you the world, and you can drop any adventure you want into that world. So it's a little bit more open, allowing you as a storyteller to recreate what you want and tell the story you want within that world. So as opposed to providing you information on how to deal with specific scenes or encounters like in the adventure book, it provides you information on like the king and his family in the campaign book, so that you can create your own intrigue and develop your own story around those NPCs. They both have their merits. I definitely use the adventure books more because they provide a lot more crunch and random things that I feel like I can draw upon in my own game a lot more regularly. Like in the Icewind Dale book, having nice ready-made adventures, monsters, scenes is a lot more useful to me than a pre-made continent that doesn't actually exist in my home world. My players are in the Drakes right now, which is a completely homebrew content as opposed to canon content. Homebrew content is made by the DM. Canonical content is actual material in a Wizards of the Coast book.
If we ever decide to do our own like random little talk to each other podcast thing like we've talked about, doing something like this, I'd actually really like to do that because there are things I don't know existed. Like, I'd like you to hand me a book and be like, find something in here you want to talk about. And I'll give you no warning. I'll just put together questions from the book about things I want to talk about.
I
Because,
would
like,
love to do that.
dragon marks? What the heck is that? Why didn't I know those existed? I want to talk about them now.
Dragon marks are tattoos that kind of spawn on your person and provide you magical powers.
Yes. So, I think that's what we're going to do. You and me on Saturdays.
We're going to just do random D&D chats.
You're going to hand me a book, one book of your choosing, and say, find something in there that you want to talk about. And maybe I'll warn you which thing it is, but I'm going to put together my list of questions, and we're going to talk about it together.
All right.
And we're going to start with Eberron, because I feel like this was a setting made for me that I have never gotten to explore.
It is, okay. Every campaign setting has its own vibe that it tries to personify. Eberron is steampunk meets pulp novels.
It's like fairy punk.
Sure, fairy punk. It's like
Pixie punk, that's what I called it.
Yeah, pixie punk.
Pixie
It's
punk.
Indiana Jones meets the most. It is the who's the Iron Man guy? What's his name?
Tony Stark.
It's the Tony Stark, Sherlock Holmes world in D&D. It's
Archie,
that
would you
vibe.
watch that? If Caleb and I just sat and talked about random things out of these books. Would you join us and talk to us? It does kind of look like Iron Man on the cover.
Well, that's a Warforged. They were created to be soldiers and diplomats in the Great War before their world went to shit.
There's nobody here to tell me to stop singing. I love to sing. I'm not good at it, but I like to do it. And I know a lot of random lyrics. I used to be better. I actually was a fairly good singer until I started running, and then somehow that destroyed my voice.
But
She's not answering me.
that's fine. In terms of book dynamics, core books trump everything else because everything else runs off of core books. Yes, I think of a good orc name. Creating an orc character. Yes, I love. Okay, so I had. Depends on the flavor of orcs you want to do. If you're going more of like a native industrial vibe of orc, anything with hard consonants is great. I had a orc-raised halfling named Bokaka. I had the Vakora, the orc paladin.
Wasn't Vakora the son of Bokaka?
Yes. It's not Temujin, but I use a lot of Mongolian guttural sounding names for orcs. Because Mongolians are how I imagine orcs working. I used a lot of cultural names. My dwarves are Russian. My orcs are Mongolian. My dragonborn are Persian.
Really?
Idealistically. Not the ones in the drakes. The drake...
My dragonborn's special.
Kobolds are American. Because kobolds are...
He's saying an orc rogue.
An orc rogue. Shova.
Isn't that a little close to like the isn't Shova Jewish, the prayer you do on Salat?
Oh, well.
Sorry, just trying to be sensitive.
Shovas.
How about Shora?
No, that's...
Shoka?
Shogul.
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 Shogul?
Yeah. Depends on the type of rogue. If he's a little bit more of like a Shiv kind of guy, Shikal could be like a very strong...
Shakan.
Shakan?
Shakan.
Oh, I dig that. Shikana. Shakan.
Shakan.
Khan is king or ruler in the Mongolians.
Sounds good.
Awesome. But yeah, it all depends on the type of vibe you're going for. I got tired of Scottish dwarves, so I decided to make my dwarves a little bit more Russian. Not that that's been able to be articulated.
I feel like dwarves are actually more Russian than Scottish. Like, that actually works better in my head.
I blame Gimli. It happens.
It does.
But yeah, there's a lot of storytelling you can get put in place by just naming your NPCs a particular way.
I just had a thought.
What?
Best use for the pop-up green screen?
To block
To block the sun! We have a pop-up green screen because
this room was not made for streaming.
This room was not made for streaming, and when we first talked about doing the D&D game, I don't know if you saw how much you saw of the first episode in the studio, we actually had the pop-up green screens behind us, but they weren't big enough. So then we got the things to hang on the wall. We did think about just painting the walls. So yeah, now I have a pop-up green screen, and I haven't really known what I was going to do with it. So that's what. He'd say Irish for the dwarves. Irish for the dwarves.
Oh, Irish dwarves sound lovely. That sounds really chipper. I can get behind that.
Yeah.
I
like Irish anything. That sounds weird to say.
I really wish we lived on that particular side of the world. I mean, I've been to Ireland once.
Never been to Ireland. I want to go. I want to visit the Guinness factory. I know that is the most basic thing to say. But I love Guinness.
But the Cliffs of Moher are so darn stunning. Yeah. I actually based the barrow off of the Cliffs of Moher a little bit. So I made them way more tropical, but that steep drop. The barrow isn't in the Little Drake. It's actually off of Runner's Rock.
Caleb has these really cool cards that like have his maps on them.
Yeah, it's a problem. Oh, you can't see diddly.
You have to like
That's not the camera, love.
Oh, that's not the camera.
You set this up.
I know. And then this one has shown up
A couple
in
times.
the game.
That's a prison bay. That's... But
I never remember to like keep a YouTube tab up. I don't know if anyone's on YouTube. If anyone is,
hi, YouTubers.
yeah, we're answering things on Twitch.
Sorry. We are... Well, I'm not electronically competent.
There's
so
only so much streaming my poor
system
internet
can handle. We're trying to fix that, but that'll take some time.
Always improving. That's what we aim for.
Yep. If you're interested in doing any of the adventures that I've actually run on the stream, they're all free on the Patreon. So if you want to actually run an adventure that you've seen played through, you can download any of the things I've ran. No problem. Or if you want to see players run through Dragon Spear or Icefire Peak. My kid is loud. If you want to see players play through Icefire Peak, I guarantee you someone has played that one live. So, either one's good. But yeah. So the books, in order of usefulness. Core books, followed by splat books, followed by either adventure campaign setting, depending on whether or not you're doing more of a homebrew universe kind of thing, or if you want to flesh out your own ideas a little bit more. And yeah, that's the general rule of thumb with those books. Is there anything that is also cursory to D&D that you're interested in? Like playing on a D&D mat, playing with minis?
Well, you should show off your favorite map books.
Oh, yes, but that is an entire conversation why I love them so much. But theater of the mind versus playing with miniatures. If you notice, in our weekly game, we only do theater of the mind combat, meaning we don't use miniatures at all, and that's because trying to run a miniature game with cameras, I wanted you guys to be able to see the miniatures if we were to use miniatures, and we don't have really good capabilities to do that.
One of the things that we're doing, we're trying to get together to actually get a better streaming rig, because we're actually running the game normally, and even today off of laptops, which is fine, but that's part of the reason why we run into so many of the technical issues. So we are saving up to be able to afford a better streaming rig, which would allow us to actually incorporate miniatures. Also, the table we play on is only about 1.5 feet wide.
So it doesn't fit any of my maps.
There's not like a lot of room, and as you, I'm sure, have seen Caleb and Meg fighting over the corner. So
like that one particular episode where she knocked over my dice like 3 times.
You knocked them over too. The two of you were knocking them over.
She kept shoving them off.
The one time you hit them.
It's possible. I'm not gonna guess. But yeah, there's not much room on that table for anything. So, it depends on the space. And, you don't need to be sorry, it's fine. I try to organize my tags a little bit so that you guys can find the free adventures as easily as possible, but...
Yeah, there's,
the tags are weird.
Well, yeah, and there's I have a lot of balls in the air. It's ideally on Holy Hops, not Holy Hops, on DungeonHavoc.com, a lot of the free stuff should be pulling over. However, because of the way that the Patreon plugin works, it's kind of, I have to go in and like approve them to be live, so they're not always up there. It's actually a little better organized there. You can like click around a little easier.
Thank her for that.
It's what I do. I'm a web developer.
Yeah.
So that's what I do for my day job. Caleb is a stay-at-home dad for his day job.
So instead of killing the children, I send various critters to their death at the hands of my players for my catharsis.
I mean,
I'll take whatever.
He's a saint. He likes to pretend he's not, but I couldn't deal with kids all day, so even though I love them dearly.
Sure.
I do. So
yeah. When you ran your game, did you run it with miniatures or without? Do you have any questions about miniatures, maps, dice, anything in particular? Because I have commentary on dice, I have commentary on literally everything.
Bag 1. Bag 2.
Yes, I have a lot of dice.
There's more. But they're scattered.
I also have commentary on third-party products. I don't just buy or dabble in just Wizards of the Coast books. I also dabble in...
Well, you're in a book.
I am in a book.
You're in... I don't remember what it's called.
This book. I'm in Toma Beast 2.
He said without. What's the point of a miniature?
It's easier that way. But yeah, I'm in...
Wait, it's easier without them?
It can be, yeah. You don't have to worry about it.
There are pros and cons of both. The one thing that I find frustrating about... Archie, all you need is one set of dice, but, I mean, you'll buy more. It's just a matter of time. We all succumb to the siren call of different dice. But, yeah, the miniatures do have pros and cons. For me, because I don't know if anyone's noticed this, I am extremely ADHD. So sometimes I lose the thread of what's going on, and what's going on with the miniatures can actually help me pick it up without having to be like, hey, sorry, I got distracted by this dust mote floating in the air. Can you tell me what just happened? But it also, I think, doesn't allow for... I think for some people it boxes them in and it's harder to think creatively because they see a concrete situation.
Right. For example, if you're doing a combat in a room with a fireplace, if you're doing a more theater of the mind thing, one of the players might be creative and intentionally shove the monster into the fireplace to burn them. That kind of absurdism doesn't really get picked up as much whenever you start using miniatures.
Well, because a lot of times, unless you've got those crazy sets like Matt Mercer sets up, where
Dwarven Forge
or
nonsense.
the ones if you ever do get to watch Acquisition Sync, or if you have they have these really nice custom made ones where layers lift off. But when you're looking at a pre-generated map, you don't really know in your head as a player is that fireplace really there? Is that fire pit really there? Or is it just printed on the map? And so, you don't want to look like a stupid person and be like, I shove his head into the fireplace. And the DM's like, oh, that's not really there. Try again. Whereas when the DM's explaining it, you're getting ideas based on the picture he's painting in your head. And it's a little easier to act on them.
However, that being said, having the miniatures on the map are really beneficial when things start getting a little bit more complicated. Whenever players are concerned about their positioning in relation to other characters so that their fireball doesn't incinerate their comrades, or whenever there's 12 enemies lined up in a weird formation along the edge of a balcony, that kind of thing might matter. having maps may be beneficial, but isn't required.
Yeah. I think it's a give and take.
Yes. It depends on the situation, depends on the combat. And I definitely have opinions on different types of maps and whatnot.
Yeah, we had the sets where you could build the houses that had the grids on them.
Never used it.
They were set up for a while in our old house.
Hated them. They took so much effort, though.
They were cool, background pieces.
Yeah, I had little tiny houses and whatnot, Warhammer, Warhammer terrain almost. Very fancy, detailed, kind of just. But I never adjusted them or could modify them in a way to make them more useful in my D&D game. So they just became display pieces, and I kind of hate them. But that's all going that way. So in terms of sets, I only use, in short, there's Theater of the Mind, there's Battle Mats, which you draw on. Those are cool. Use one of those for half of my DMing career. There's D&D books, which are new, that I've been using for the past 6 years and I swear by. And then there's the actual modular terrain things, like D&D tiles or Dwarven Forge and that kind of stuff. Can't stand those. Nope. I'm lazy and my players are too chaotic, so it's kind of hard to assemble those kind of encounters on the fly.
We also have a 7-year-old who already runs off with D&D pieces.
Yep.
This kid's biggest dream, and I'm not even lying, is to help his daddy make D&D stuff. He makes magical items on index cards. It's adorable. But he really loves miniatures, and he will make off with them. And when we had the houses up, he tried to play with the houses.
Kids are fun.
Oh, he's a lot of fun, except when he's not. No, he's a cool kid.
But, so that's the terrain in a nutshell. D&D books. Highly recommend them.
Do you want to show one?
Yeah, why not? Again, this is not necessarily something you would want to pick up straight away. It's only if you have a campaign going on for a little while.
The Dungeon Book of Battle Mats.
These books are made by, where's the name? Loki Battle Mats. Show the name close by. Basically, these books are really, really lazy map making. So you open it up and it creates a situational dungeon. This is Dungeons, and it's specific. This is just their generic book. I just bought Wilderness, I think, or I just bought Cities. And they're coming out with Wilderness soon. But basically, I can just look through this, be like, this is close enough. Plop it down, and I can combine it with other books.
What's really cool is we've got the little one by them, and so that one that he just had up.
Yeah, I can put this up, have that as a connecting room, and call it a day. And it becomes dynamic. And yeah, it's lazy map making on the fly.
And can you write on these with the...
Yes, you can still use dry erase or wet erase, whatever you want. I don't need to, but yeah, I love those books. They look nice and helps me be lazy. I like lazy tools. That's just
I kind of want to
mats.
pick up the camera and show off your bookshelf, but
I
that
have
might be
a
hard.
problem. Yeah.
He broke a bookshelf with his D&D books.
I had to get a stronger one. It made me sad. But that's the mat. The miniatures, I hate plastic miniatures. I hate painting. So I have a few just from over the years, just various small miniatures on hand. Don't like them though. Paizo actually puts out Pathfinder Pawns, which are like these little tiny cardstock little things they can just drop on stands with nice pieces of art on them. And they're cheap. You can buy like 150 of them in like one of those nice big boxes for like $30.
Like,
And that gives you all the miniatures you need for like ever.
And then you only need like a handful of bases for them. So
and they come in the box.
Ones.
And they come in the box.
Yeah, this table is really cool. It's got these little shelves here that Caleb can keep all of his DMing stuff on. And he's got like a drawer.
Yep.
And because I fiddle.
I'm an addict. So I have
it's okay.
D&D books, which I use for the encounters. I primarily use the stands or the pawns for the miniatures when we do in-person games. For digital play, I only do Theater of the Mind because I can't use digital tools. And I much prefer staring at people's faces as opposed to a battle mat. Just because reading people's faces is important. How I try to progress the story. So yeah. How are we looking on time? I have actually...
We are at 56 minutes out of 2 hours.
We've covered a lot of material in a very short amount of time, guys. So yes, that is the books in a nutshell. That is the...
Seriously, Archie, if there is like any topic you want to hear us ramble on about, just ask.
Yep. And of course, there's free options for literally everything.
Yeah, I was playing with D&D map makers today, just because I was trying. So we're doing virtual events now, and we like make these virtual event platforms. And I was trying to make a map for a farmer's market, so you could like click around in a virtual farmer's market, and that didn't work very well. But they're really cool, and I am sure if someone had the time to figure them out, it would be awesome. I don't know what's going on with my hair. It's like doing weird things.
It happens.
I need a haircut.
We all do.
I like your hair long.
Oh, thank you. DM screens. I don't use one. There's a lot of random things I do that most DMs don't do.
You have some DM screens here.
I do have DM screens here, but I only use them as props in like random videos. I don't actually use them. Yeah, tiki-talkies, but that's all I use them for. I haven't made a TikTok in a long time.
I'll probably do that.
Yeah, eventually.
Where are the DM screens? I just saw them.
There's a lot down here.
Oh, that's where I saw them.
There's like 3 of them down there. There's like a one for... That's the one in the Essentials kit. They're kind of nice. Most of the information on the back of them is random. Can be useful.
Where's the Rick and Morty one? Is it in the box?
It should be down there. Either there or it's behind you on the bookshelf. I really want to run the Rick and Morty one.
We were going to do that before COVID with my cousin and Howie, who made the table. There's a Rick and Morty one.
Yep. I'm a stupid Rick and Morty fan. Can't wait for the next season, if it ever comes out. Existentialism should be in every cartoon. So
my favorite cartoons have it.
Fair.
And if you ever want a rundown of American cartoons.
Ooh. Ooh.
We only watch the highest of caliber cartoons. We have a weird rule in our house. No. Like, Klaus wasn't allowed to watch this stupid kid shows. Ah, he loves Rick and Morty.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yay!
Thank you.
Yeah, like PJ Masks and things like that weren't allowed. It had to have a plot.
There is a Rick and Morty D&D adventure box with pre-gen characters and everything, and it's completely irreverent and it's lovely.
I want to play it.
It's fun. So if you need to jumpstart the game after quarantine, that's a great way to do it. I did like the Rick and Morty one over the Stranger Things box adventure.
Did you get the Stranger Things box adventure?
Yeah. I had the Demogorgon figures and everything. Where are they? It's somewhere in there. It doesn't matter. But, yeah, I got the Stranger Things box. It's a meh adventure. Having the stats for the Demogorgon is cool, but...
Archie, I have a random question for you. Every week, I have at least 3 drinks with me. Do you notice the fact that I have a ton of different drinks at the table with me?
You're obsessed with that running joke.
I know, but that's because I don't know if anybody's gotten it or if it's just silly. It's also just me. I normally just have 3 drinks. Like, I've got, like, my flavored drink, my unflavored drink, and my other warm, usually a warm drink. Stranger Things is amazing.
Stranger Things, the show is amazing. The adventure is okay.
He's never noticed.
Ha!
It makes me so sad. But I figured that was the case. Let's sigh.
There's a lot of jokes that get dropped that aren't picked up, and that's okay. Just gotta lay the groundwork.
Kosh just sent me a screen request for Minecraft.
That's so surprising. Our kid in Minecraft?
Wanting screen time on Minecraft.
Mm. What are you fiddling with now?
I want to turn it on.
You can't. It's not plugged in.
That makes me sad.
You have to plug it in to turn it on.
Well, why isn't it
Like my
plugged
rice
in?
cooker. Like I need to turn it off eventually after this video.
You never turned off the rice cooker?
I left it on warm to clean out.
Should I run down and turn that off for you?
Nah, leave it on. It's fine.
Okay.
It's only on warm. I got a personal, like, completely off topic. I got a little tiny $20 mini rice cooker just to do personal meals because I wanted to save a little bit of money and eat a little healthier. Best $20 I ever spent on my life. I've been eating nothing but really kind of nice
You eat a
meals
lot of
lately.
rice.
I eat a lot of rice right now.
Oh, there's this one too.
Yep, that's Little Drake. That's where the other campaign is housed in. It's the major city in Little Drake. Major city in the Drakes. What are you looking at?
My email?
Our kid is going to get murdered.
Don't say that on camera. Our kid takes after me. Believe it or not, I was a very loud child. Now, I'm a much more subdued human being. But he's definitely ADHD.
So do you have any questions about the campaign, about the campaign setting?
Anything? Like,
Well, do you have any questions?
me?
Yeah. About the campaign, the setting.
I mean, I just wish I knew more about, like, the history of the world, because I know that a lot of stuff... So, both of Caleb's campaigns take place in the same world, and there was another campaign before the one he's currently running with the other group that happened that impacted the world heavily, and I kind of wish I had more information from that from, like, a history standpoint.
Okay.
Because all I know it happens is not like I had, like, a complete play-by-play every week, and I think it would be interesting, which is why I was, like, super hoping one day to get, like, one of the other players from that game in here to, like, lore dump, but in a creative way.
Well, I can just lore dump. In the last campaign...
But is this stuff Pippin would know?
Yeah.
Okay.
There were a group of adventurers that set out to make the world a more peaceable place. The demon lords were trying to overtake the world. Are you still dealing with emails? What are you doing?
No, I want to write down when you're going to do the lore dump.
Oh, I see.
Because I would like to cut that out and put it separately and make its
Sure.
own little mini video out of it for anyone who wants to know the history of the world.
Okay.
So, go.
So, about 100 and some odd years ago, the where to begin? Sorry.
You weren't prepared for this.
It happens. So 100 and some odd years ago, there was this demonic entity that unleashed the demons on the material world. She broke reality in a unique way. The adventurers banished those demons back into the abyss and chased those demons into the abyss in order to stop her plan of birthing the creator god into the world. They killed her, they killed the creator god, and in that moment they killed off all the gods. Because by killing the creator god, they killed off all of its lineage. So that killed off basically all the major powers. Now, because the divine entities were holding the divine essence of mortals in their hands, all of that was then freed and released back upon the world. It also caused the various planes of reality, like the heavens, the hells, everything, to kind of just crash into each other since no divine entity was holding them apart. So, the important part that you need to know is these bunch of adventurers killed Father God, which killed off all of his children. And in doing so, caused magic to go wonky. There are priests who are blessed or gifted, who just intrinsically have magic in them divinely. Similar to a sorcerer, but on the different side of things.
So that's like Quinto?
That's like Quinto. Someone who is innately touched to interact with a facet of their nature.
For him is beer.
Yep, him and his beer. He's obsessed.
Which is really funny because John doesn't drink. Like, he doesn't not drink, but he's not like... He doesn't drink. He it's like...
It's not important to him.
It's not important to him. He's not like a huge beer fan. He
just picked beer because he was owning a tavern.
Yeah. I just find that amusing. So, like, how does that impact Pippin's magic? She's a druid.
She is able to manipulate... Think of divine magic as life magic. You can either tap into that magic in your own blood or in the world around you. Being a druid, you often tap into the living magic around you. That's where it comes from. So it's not necessarily like divine spiritual beings that you're getting blessings from. It's the fact that something is alive that you're able to touch it. And Michael, if you're watching, that's part of the reasons why undead are affected by divine magic the way that they are, and why clerics can't. Why Turn Undead always affects undead. It's because they are the abomination of life itself. And so when a cleric like Quinto harnesses that actual life energy against an undead, it flees from them.
But how's he getting life energy from beer? Like, is it the yeast?
No, the beer is the
Vocal.
actual projection of his divine essence. His life magic comes from him, not the beer.
Got it.
It's fine. I hope that you have a lovely week ahead. I hope that this was mildly informative. And thank you for joining us for as much as you did. Thank you for always watching our show. It's really actually kind of nice having someone we can count on. So thank you.
I sent him a heart too.
Yeah,
So it's just gonna be you and me chatting now.
that's fine. So that is how clerics interact and how druids interact. So a cleric can be a sorcerer in essence, basically using his own power, or he can take on a little bit more of a warlock vibe and tap into someone else's life essence to draw power from.
So here's an interesting question for you. Where did you get the idea for this world, the drakes and everything?
Most of the campaign setting is reactionary to what my players do. Always. The first campaign setting was pretty much Forgotten Realms, Cold Bar. But whenever they killed God, I kind of had to deviate from the standard path a lot. The Drakes was created whenever I asked this new campaign, what do you want to play? And they had been in the Underdark for half the campaign through Out of the Abyss. And they were like, we want daylight. We want something a little bit livelier than rocks surrounding me all the time. Because there's only so many times you can talk about bioluminescent fungi crawling up the walls before it gets old. And I did that for 4 going on 5 years. So anyway, so once that campaign ended, I asked the players what did they want to play. They wanted to play something in the tropics, near a volcano, with tropics with a shoreline, so they wanted a coastal adventure. And I asked them what their regional races were. And they asked for Dragonborn and Gnomes. All that should sound familiar since it sounds almost identical to what these guys picked as a starting point.
Which is why we're so close together.
Right. Otherwise, you guys would be on other parts of the map. And I would have to jimmy rig or come up with 2 different aspects of this world.
Well, there are half elves on.
Yeah. There are half elves.
Because Pippin is half elf, half dragonborn.
Correct.
But takes the dragonborn racial traits.
Correct.
I cannot wait until we could possibly eventually get into more of Pippin's weird backstory. It's a wild ride. Because I'm a weird person.
Your character's dad is probably one of my favorite NPCs in your campaign setting. In your game. The other game is based off of long-standing game lore. And so there's a few NPCs in that one that I'm more attached to. But Sebastian's hilarious. I love that man. There's so much in-game and out-of-game lore. Can get really fun. Because nothing is canon until it hits table.
Right.
So there's a lot of headspace to play around in that time before something gets articulated. So Sebastian right now is this whimsical figure with his vices. And hopefully he gets portrayed in a way that it serves justice to the ideal.
Pippin was definitely, obviously created first, but it was weird coming up with Sebastian because it was like we were driving home from playing a game and I was like, wouldn't it be funny if? And then we just ran with it.
Going off of NPCs that you think are interesting. The most famous NPC in my last campaign that is now canon was one I pulled out of my butt. The characters went down a well because they were trying to escape some guards. And that's where they encountered well goblins, well gremlins, because I needed something at the bottom of the well. And they just kept demanding wishes. Give me wishes. And they would throw things at them, and they'd be like, ugh. Throwing things back. It's like, I demand coin, not nonsense. And there was no wish on that. I wish for a way out. Good wish. Thank you. And then they led them down a passage and led them eventually to this night hag. These guys were level 14 at the time, so a night hag was nothing. They could have easily trounced it. But the way I characterized this particular NPC made them actually not attack it on sight. After playing the game for a while, you'll come to realize that players grow a little emboldened as they grow in level, and they stop fearing anything. It's just the nature of the game. They grow arrogant. It's a thing that happens. So whenever these 14th level overpowered weirdos gave pause at this NPC, it's like, you are officially canon, and I will use you again. Because Old Martha creeped them out. Old Martha was this simple 4-foot tall old crone who basically just stood there in rags, and she would just reach out with one arm with fingers that are just twice as long as they should be. As her arm reached out, the length between like a wrist and the elbow would stay the same, but she would just get way too many joints as this arm stretched out 12 feet. So she would have this like 12-foot long arm with like 3 elbows in it. And it just creeped out the players to such a degree as she just like touched one of their noses, just being all like grossly flirtatious while being this repulsive creature.
We were watching the new Witches movie with Anne Hathaway, and Caleb got super excited because the Grand High Witch in that, the way her arms extended, he said looked like her.
Yeah, that's exactly how I envisioned this one character moving towards one of the players. You know, the players, and she had more than 2 hands. She had 6 visible in that scene.
Is she?
I drew her in one of the books. It's fine. We
one
can't
of the
find
cards. I thought.
No. She's not on a card.
Which one has like 6 limbs on one of the cards?
No, I haven't drawn a card with her on it. The only NPC that I've had in game on a card is Volley. And Volley is a fun
what am I thinking?
god.
Did you draw her for an
I
D4
did draw
or something?
Yeah. I drew her, I inked her, but it was for a D4 table, not for a card. Yeah. I love creepy NPCs. They bring me joy. How are we looking on time?
We are at an hour and 20 minutes. Only 40 more minutes to go.
Since it's kind of just a random episode, we can go 10. Make it an hour and a half. I actually really enjoyed this, though. I like the idea of just randomly talking about random books and stuff.
I mean, I think maybe setting an hour time frame for you and I once a week to sit down and
just chat.
Even if we do it on Monday evenings when Dad's here after Char's picked up.
Mondays?
Or we can do it Saturday and just ask Klaus not to bug us, but
we'll figure it out.
But I like my idea of like, I'll take a book and find something interesting.
Find a topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so this NPC called Old Martha, this creepy old hag, skied the players out and actually interacted with her and did not attack, and the players did not attack her. And so I made an entire mythos around this coven of witches ran by Polaris, the Queen of Wishes, because you wish upon a star.
When you wish upon a star.
And it is now a really firm cornerstone of the campaign setting. Because they aren't divine, they aren't arcane, they're just this old-ass wish magic. And I love them dearly. The characters keep interacting with these cluster of hags all the time. Because they'll grant any wish. You just might not like the price. In this most recent campaign, they encountered, not Rickety May, not Old Martha, Granny Earwig.
Oh.
Granny Earwig is a maid from 1,000 bugs that are local to the region, because she can personify in a region and then just dissipate and appear somewhere else. But she's just a cluster of bugs with like a rag over her or a cowl or something. And she just talks like this, like an old grandmother, and just falls apart as like an arm collapses and dissipates into a colony of insects. But Earwig made a deal with one of my players for... The players wanted some information. Granny Earwig was willing to give the players that information in exchange for one of his ears. And he took it. And now Granny Earwig can hear everything the character can hear. And that's not the first inopportune deal that my players make. Because my players always make bad decisions. In Alicia's first game, we played with a character called Dano.
A person, you mean?
A person named Dano. And he played a sorcerer who was a descendant of Tiamat herself. I gave him the ability to transfer the element of any of his spells to a different element. Nothing major, but it was fun. He encountered a wizard who was willing to make a deal. For a pint of blood, of your blood, I will possibly offer you this wizard staff in like a gamble situation. If you complete this, I'll give you the wizard staff. If you lose, I get to keep your blood. It was like, deal. So he withdrew the blood, and he withdrew Tiamat's blood, preventing him from using his elemental switcheroo ability. That was mainly a gimmick so that I could then throw a black dragon at them without him using a strong element against him. But the look on Dano's face was choice. Cook face.
Chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss. It was beautiful.
That actually, I have such fond memories of that campaign. That was the first campaign I ever played in. And like, there's still stuff that I reference from that campaign. I loved that campaign. It was such a weird group of people, too.
It really was.
We had a player in that one behead his own wife.
I gotta pull the knife. That player pulled a knife out at me over that.
Yeah.
Still one of my top 5 favorite DMing moments.
I just had a realization.
What's that?
That player are the same NPC in life.
They do have a very similar vibe.
Yes. Anyway.
I've been playing a long time. You see certain trends repeat itself. It's a thing. Are we casting on YouTube?
We are casting on YouTube. I checked YouTube.
Alright.
There was no one there. It
Alright.
says that there's other people here now, but... Oh, no, there's not. I don't really know how this works.
It's fine.
So... Yeah.
But as you play D&D longer, you'll grow more accustomed to the people you're playing with. And you'll start building up.
Why don't we talk for a little bit about your deviation away from D&D and why you're such a big homebrew person?
What do you mean?
Like, talk about like why you started doing like D12 and
Oh
Hodge.
gosh. Oh,
Hodge.
that is so. Oh no.
I think it adds something though to you as a creator to know that there was a
Oh
time when you
man.
like tried to make your own system and why it worked, what didn't work, what you love about 5th edition.
All right.
Unlike a lot of people who've been playing for a long time who kind of crap on 5th edition.
Fourth.
No. A
Fifth
lot of
edition's
people
amazing.
I've
No
seen
one craps on fifth.
I've seen people crap on 5th edition hold up 3.5 as the ultimate system and why did anybody leave it?
All right. So, D&D, as most people see it, just know it as D&D in its modern sense. But this is actually the 5th edition of the game. The first 2 editions of Dungeons & Dragons, 1 and 2, had a very different feel. You could more equate them to Dark Souls, where you could expect to die more than succeed. Where dungeons were brutal and unsympathetic. You did not build characters to build these grand story arcs to develop crazy mythos. They were made more board game like without the board game. So that was the first 2 editions. I actually love the lore from those games because the monsters were way...
Spider monkeys.
Spider monkeys are my favorite monster in all of Dungeons & Dragons, but that is a whole different conversation.
Sorry.
But the first 2 editions were Dark Souls. 3rd edition actually tried to develop the game into the story arc system, but it gamified everything. Everything got overproduced and the game became absurd. I played a Thri-Kreen quad-wielding scimitar dervish person who had 12 attacks a turn. I played the Pixie Gundam who would like open up the armament slots and shoot out 100-something magic missiles. Things got weird in 3rd edition. I love 3rd edition, but it was a programmer's system. It got weird. I love it. It's weird. I made a guy who could throw aircraft carrier weighted statues at a creature, and it was... Sorry. 3rd edition, as much as it spawned a lot of my favorite nonsense, I probably will never even look back at, mostly. 4th edition, in contrast, doesn't have any of the fun lore aspects. It did have a lot of game traits that I am more than willing to steal, but 4th edition denied the players the mystical flavor of Dungeons & Dragons in the game's past. In earlier editions, you could kind of throw out different ideas about how to address the situation. In 4th edition, all of the absurd options were removed and was codified. And it lost a lot of the game's magic. It became a war game instead of Dungeons and Dragons. And with that transition, I actually tried to make my own system, developed a lot of rules. Many of those rules were actually picked up and better made in 5th edition, and that's why I completely killed that project and went to 5th edition. 5th edition is actually my favorite edition because it allows the versatility of 1st, 2nd edition without the absurdity of 3rd, and without being overly codified of fourth. It allows Gully to use her burning hands to just roast someone's skull. It provides me the rules to easily portray that in an interesting way. It allows me to interact with certain situations that are absurd, but without breaking the game or having to homebrew whole lists of rules to portray that happening. So, yes, 5th edition might not be everyone's favorite, but it is definitely mine. Because it allows me as a creator to quickly create interesting moments without having to break or create entire plethoras of text to justify.
I mean, the first game we played was 3.5, and then we played a game in 4th. And then...
We played 1 through 3 and 4th, which is...
What do you mean?
A lot.
We went up 3 levels?
Yeah, you went up to level 3 and would have hit level 4 at the end of the last adventure.
Okay. But the 4th edition, there was a lot of, like, weird things to keep track of. That was also a very weird time in my life. And then we switched over to Hodge/D12. And there was a lot of adventures there.
I'm a big fan of rules light systems. And 5th edition is rules light.
And it makes it a lot easier, like, as a player, because I don't want to have to worry about too many, like, things. I'm very much in it for the stories, not the math, which is why I hated... What was that one that you guys all love to play? Oh, I hated it so much. The robot one.
Oh, gosh. Battletech?
Yeah, I hated Battletech.
Oh my gosh. That was nothing but a war game.
I know, and I tried.
I loved it.
I know.
I was so good at playing a Jenner. Okay. I played a Jenner against a tonnage for tonnage. I still swear that light mechs are better than medium or heavy any day of the week. No contest.
Okay.
Sorry. Back to what we were doing.
But, like, 4th edition felt really bogged down in, like, really weird mechanics. To me.
4th edition was bogged down and heavy. A combat in 4th edition took twice as long minimum than in 5th. And I'm not a big combat person.
Me either. I also like the design of the 5th edition books better. The 4th edition with, like, the tan with the pictures ripping through. I don't like the covers of the 4th edition books.
In terms of book
Such
design,
a weird thing.
in terms of book design, 2nd edition was the most consistent throughout all its books. I love 2nd edition books.
5th edition, the spines at least all look the same.
I love the graphic design and the evolution of 5th edition. 5th edition has grown the most from its starting point. It's by far the most careful of the various options. 2nd edition was volatile. There were some good 2nd edition and some terrible 2nd edition. But 5th edition books are the most stable.
Here's an interesting question for you.
Sure.
So, you might have a better timeline than me for this, but, like, it seemed like when we started playing in 2007 together.
Yeah, that's college.
Yeah, we're old, Caleb.
Yeah.
When we started playing in 2007 together, 3.5 had been around for a bit.
Sure.
And then in 2008 is when 4th came around.
Yep, that sounds about right.
So then it was right around when Klaus was born, like 2013.
Sure.
that 5th came around. And so that's only putting it at...
It's the shortest lifespan of all the editions, by far.
So do you think that 5th is going to end up being one of the longer lifespans of an edition? Or do you see them like getting ready to start putting out 6 sometime soon?
That is probably that's a complicated question. First and second edition, Zero Edition, kind of swim together. There was a lot of reverse programming involved with the rules. I imagine that to be the case with 5th edition from here on out. 5th edition has such a solid groundwork that trying to create past it at this point would be an uphill battle. So anything that they engineer from this point for a while, unless they do something crazy,
Because I mean, after...
is going to be reverse compatible. So if they did do a 6th edition, which I don't think is happening anytime soon, it would have to be reverse compatible.
So like 2nd to 3rd edition, you got rid of...
Or be reactionary to culture norms. But that's a whole different conversation.
But they're doing the reaction to cultural norms within 5th edition by removing the racial traits and things like that.
But they're doing that through...
I'm sorry, is this too advanced for this discussion?
It might be. I'm trying to consolidate it. In the most recent book that Wizards of the Coast put out, which is Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, or whatever it's called, they put in a blurb about adjusting modifiers for racial ability scores to accommodate for the fact that
Not everyone's
not
the same.
every humanoid's ability scores should be homogeneous, that it should allow for deviations to allow the personification of a character. And that was 3 paragraphs, not a lot, but
It was something you already did. I think probably a lot of DMs did.
it's something that I accounted for, but in my own way. Because I do feel like that allowing monsters to have norms is fair. Having orcs on the average be stronger than a human is fair. But in an orcish culture, having a smart orc should also be fair. So I actually have something implemented called regional races, which allows you to modify ability scores within that individual's culture. If you're playing a orc in a human society, expect to play the normal bonuses of strength and con, or strength and whatever. But in an orc society where they are more accessible to their education and whatnot, it makes sense that they have more options available to them in their own culture. So they can play whatever they want in that culture effectively. It also allows them the players, to play something that's interesting, but not deviating or something like metropolitan everywhere they go. So if in their city, they're playing a dragon and gnomish centric area. So since there's more gnomes and more dragonborn than expected, you can expect to see more variation within those people. However, if you see an orc within that city, you can expect them to behave a little bit more orcish, which is strong, constitution-based, and whatnot. It's not a metropolitan kind of environment because orcs don't have quite as many resources in that area. And that's based off of a more ethnocentric environment they're built around. It's not how I wish the world would work, but it's the world that I kind of see happening and how I portray it in the game. So if you're in an area that is prolific in particular D&D monsters, I allow mobility within ability scores in that. and feats and whatnot. But if you're
So-
playing outside of that region, variations are rare.
But, like, how do you then handle, like, let's say, like, for instance, Eeny Meeny.
Yes.
Okay, so Eeny Meeny
The
are
two
growing
orcs.
up in Prison Bay. And let's say that Eeny decides to go hang out more at the Holy Hops Tavern and really likes Pippin.
Yep.
And he and Pippin hang out, and Pippin teaches him all about plants. And somebody then wants to come along and play Eeny.
You have to keep in mind that Eeny and Meeny are both orcs raised by orcish parents in this particular region. What you're talking about is a background. And that could be adjusted in 100 different ways. But his upbringing would still be orcish in this particular instance. And that would be based off of his parents raising him.
So the bad guys come back, kill his parents, and Pippin adopts Eeny.
That is a very specific backstory, and talk to your DM. And I'm more than willing to allow this because I allow basically
Archie,
everything.
we are talking about a lot of random things. It started out with talking about the different editions and then going into how D&D has kind of evolved and the fact that in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything they put out a thing about adjusting for ability scores in racial modifiers.
What is your view, out of curiosity, what is your view of ability score modifiers being tied to D&D races? I don't see it being a problem, but allowing for deviations in certain situations I think is actually advantageous. Because it allows players to play something weird like an orcish wizard. Especially in an orcish town. Makes sense.
Yeah, but like what I was talking about is like you specifically said like raising orcs in other towns, and like right now you have Eeny and Meeny in Prison Bay. They're like the only orcs.
Yes, they are the only orcs, which means that
But-
there's prejudice built against them.
But there is, but you have like I could see Pippin taking Eeny under her wing and being like, all right, here's the plants, and he becomes a little druid.
But that would totally work just fine.
Yeah.
I wouldn't give him like an option to adjust his wisdom modifier necessarily, because he doesn't have the infrastructure built around him to allow the change of ability scores necessarily. But an orcish druid sounds awesome, and I would totally support that.
Well, maybe if Pippin dies, instead of doing an artificer, I'll play Eeny.
You do that.
Archie said, I think for me it helps keep things under control, but for more creative play, it is too constrictive.
Exactly the same point. I support that.
So,
So it depends on the type of game. It depends. Talk to your DM.
and if you are the DM, do you?
Yep.
Like, you get to set the rules. Because that's a thing that, like, that's the one thing that bugged me about some of the people that we've played with in the past is there would be, like, fights at the table because the rules say this.
Rules lawyers. Okay, I always DM, so it's a very different can of worms from my perspective, but I don't actually see rules lawyers anymore.
I don't know. I haven't played with any that I haven't played with any long-standing players in 5th edition, and I'm hoping that 5th edition kind of took away from that because I know like 3.5 had something in the manual about like the DM is the last say.
Well, there's that in 5th edition as well, but
Yeah.
rules lawyer. Okay, term defined. Rules lawyer, someone who is obnoxiously tied to the rules to such a way that they don't allow for creativity to flourish. Like disarming. Disarming technically is in 5th edition, but the DM rules that you can try to disarm a certain way. It should be allowed, but the rules lawyer says, not allowed, because there's no rule for it. That's a problem. So, rules lawyers are inhibitive, possibly, and obnoxious the rest of the time. Don't be a rules lawyer. Let the game be fun. Good rule of thumb. Just remember that Dungeons & Dragons is a game first, and everything else will go smoothly.
This is bugging me. That one hinge pin is, like, coming out.
That requires a hammer. You can't just shove that back in.
Well, we made it to an hour 45, so we might as well finish out our last 15 minutes.
Might as well. We made it further than I was expecting.
We did good
2 hours of
today.
conversation.
We actually thought Meg was going to be here for a bit. Hi, Meg, if you end up watching any of this.
Yep. I still need to talk to you about cantrips
Is that to
at
Meg?
some point. Yes, at Meg. Megs, at some point I need to talk to you about cantrips because you keep using a dagger and darts and you have no decks. You're a spellcaster. Roast things, throw acid at them, do anything.
We need to...
You and John, you guys
Oh,
keep...
thank you, Archie. He said we did very well today.
Oh, thank you.
We really like talking to each other, so it works.
Yep. And we like talking to you.
Or anyone else, because there were other people who it says were watching today.
That
Please,
never
don't be
said
shy.
hi.
We
Yeah.
like talking to people.
We're
watching.
shameless and we don't mind answering
No, he's
any question.
shameless.
I'm shameless and I don't mind answering any question.
I am not. I am a shy butterfly.
And the amount of rum I've just had doesn't hurt.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. That's my
How
fault.
hard did you make that?
The alcohol is up to here.
Why?
'Cause I like to kill you on Fridays.
Okay, quick story, unrelated. So, historically, my birthdays are terrible. It's in September, garbage birthday. Nothing ever good happens. And Alicia went out of her way to make sure that Klaus was away, that we would have a nice quiet afternoon, and she made me 2 drinks.
And there was Acquisitions Incorporated was airing live that night. It was their online convention. It was going to be perfect.
But I wasn't conscious during the game.
I pour heavy. It's a problem. I said I was sorry.
So, thank you for...
I love you.
I love you too.
But anyway, so...
Hopefully we
some
can do more of these conversations in the future, though.
Well, yeah, I think it would be really nice to, like, you know...
Come up
We're
with a
looking
topic.
for other things, other content to build out on YouTube and Twitch, just because I enjoy this format.
This is fun.
This is a lot of fun, and
Just chatting.
so we're probably going to be doing just Caleb and I, probably on Saturdays.
Or something.
No
No
probably
promises.
Saturday mornings, in all honesty.
Morning conversations?
Yeah.
I can't drink during mornings.
What are our opinions on World of Warcraft and Comic-Con, and have we been? We have not been to Comic-Con. We were huge anime convention fans. We have been to anime conventions, but we have not been to Comic-Con. I am a very socially awkward human being, which works fine at anime conventions, but I don't like large crowds, and I get very overwhelmed. So we haven't been since basically our son was born.
I like MMOs. I don't know how I feel about World of Warcraft, though.
We tried World of Warcraft. I was actually a huge Guild Wars fan back in the day. I had like 4 maxed out characters.
I was a RuneCraft kid. So...
But World of
Yeah.
Warcraft I could never really get into, unfortunately. Back to like original Warcraft, I did love StarCraft. I was very much into StarCraft for a while.
Yeah. But in terms of dynamics of interacting with characters in the story, the World of Warcraft worlds, I don't know. It just never really captured my...
It's that $15 a month.
It wasn't that for
No,
me.
for me
It
was
was... Okay. The world was always just so... level separated from me. Like, it always felt gamified.
I would have rather seen something like an MMO with Elder Scrolls.
There is an MMO with Elder Scrolls now. Not that I've ever touched it, but yeah.
That's the other thing with MMOs. Like, I prefer games that I don't need other people if I'm doing a video game, because a lot of times I'm kind of peopled out.
In terms of D&D experiences without the people, or with
D&D
people
online.
adjacent, I did do D&D online, but I enjoyed that for a whole. D&D experiences without people. Witcher 3 is solidly in that camp. It gives the right vibe. The storytelling you can get as a DM from some of those quests are choice. The monsters used in the monster stories are just as interesting as the NPCs, which is as it should be. Monsters aren't just monsters, they are story elements themselves, and they should not be forgotten. Philosophy and D&D should be a podcast, but that's a whole different can of worms.
We could work on that later. We have other projects.
Yeah. We have a universe. Anyway, But in terms of World of Warcraft, I love the artistry. It's beautiful, as everything Blizzard does is. But I'm not a big fan of World of Warcraft. The game side of things is a good endorphin hit. Dopamine hit every so many levels, but the story and the social side was always meh. What was the other thing you were talking about? Comic-Con. Conventions. That's crack for me. Convention games are fun. I've played in a handful of convention D&D games. They're the best as long as you're sociable and open to things going absolutely wrong. I want to do a few of the more modern ones in 5th edition and do like a few epics, which are like crazy complicated, unique games at conventions. But
maybe when the world stops burning.
Maybe.
We could do PAX next year.
I would love to. PAX does epics, but PAX also does AC Inc. and it does so much more.
I'd love to do PAX Unplugged next year.
Do Acquisitions Incorporated. I can't say that enough.
And anyone who ever comes to the Philly area.
Yeah.
In the future,
just
when Corona's over.
Let us know.
Yeah, we'd love to meet you.
You like
Have
people.
You on.
We'll feed you.
Yeah. So, what else? But yeah.
In terms of, no, I was going to deviate onto things you can draw inspiration from, and that is literally the universe. So that is a different week's conversation.
But yeah, I'm seriously leaning towards
doing this again
more regularly, not just when there aren't games happening. Next week, I think we are going to have John joining us, and we'll do
something prepped.
I'm angling to do a How Pippin and Quinto Met. Mm-hmm. That is my dream right now, to help get a little bit more about John's backstory, because he's been real closed lip about that. And to also kind of flesh out some of Pippin's stuff, because I love Pippin. I love all the characters I've played. I miss Caleb and I had played a game one-on-one for a long time, and I had a bard gnome named Logie. Loved that character.
One-on-one D&D should be its own episode.
I could do one-on-one D&D. But you said you didn't have time to prep for it.
I really don't.
So that's why
But we can do an episode talking about how we did that.
Okay.
Because it's... 101 D&D is a thing, and it's totally viable.
Yeah, I ended up playing. So I had a companion displacer beast,
Yeah.
and then I had a companion character named Quinn. And I told Caleb that if anything happened to Pippin, I wanted him to bring Logie into the world, but that I don't think Logie would do anything but try to get back to Quinn, not in like a romantic way, because Logie saw him as like a little brother, but in that like familial way, trying to rescue him. So, and Caleb was like, "Well, you can't play with a displacer beast and an accessory halfling. That's not gonna work." So
That also could be a different episode of 101 games, group games regular, group games sporadic. If you want group games sporadic, Acquisitions Incorporated is the best option.
D&D with viewers.
D&D with viewers is weird. Not gonna lie, but it's not a bad weird.
The thing that's weird as a player is like, so there are some episodes where some things got a little rough language-wise, and I acknowledge that. But, like, I really wanted this game to be very accessible for everybody, and so that's
because
why
we wanted to
kinda
be
cleaned
used to, like,
things up.
teach people and stuff.
So, it's very weird to sit there and, like, have to check myself with, like, what random joke am I making? Because it's very different, the random jokes I'll make when I'm alone in a room with my husband, or I'm alone in the room with my coworkers, than when you're broadcasting out to the world. As you can see, if you've ever been there before the game started and I've said something about a client on live. So, yeah, I don't always succeed.
And, yeah, there's... So doing it in front of people is weird.
And definitely worth a topic. And if anybody...
Dynamics of games is its own conversation.
Yeah.
Because things change so much.
I think that we don't often say in the episodes, which we should probably add, is like if anyone does have questions or suggestions or feedback, like obviously you can use the comments on YouTube or you can use the chat, but you can also email us. There's dungeonhavoc@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Shoot us an email.
I forgot I had that.
I monitor it. Don't worry.
Thank you.
One day we'll get him a Caleb at dungeonhavoc.com, but
If you do have a question during like the actual session about what on earth is going on, please chip in and be like, hey, what's going on right now?
can you explain that mechanic?
Can you explain that rule, or what are you using for this?
Especially because I will, the weeks that I have more time, which hasn't been lately, I do like to go in and anything that we explain out, actually write down and put in the lower left-hand corner. I don't know my right from my left. Lower left-hand corner with information. So we do want to be helpful.
Yeah.
We like helping. We need a purpose.
We need this game to be accessible, and this game is a lot of fun. But it's more than just fun. It's something that can actually be used to help build a community. It's a social game. It requires more than one person to play. And I think that helps build a lot of positive aspects in someone's life. And so having more people understand how to play the game is beneficial.
One week you have to talk about your cards.
That's a different day.
So many cards! What are these ones?
Those are items in alphabetical order, so don't just randomly pull them out.
That's why I went to the adamantine armor end.
I use
Thank you,
all kinds of props.
Archie.
Oh, well, thank you.
So yeah, what are we at? We did it!
You did it? We hit 2 hours?
It's 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 30 seconds. We weren't sure if we would make it to 2 hours today because it's just the two of us. But
And we threw it together very short notice.
Well,
I want to talk about the books at least. But
we did talk about the books.
yeah. That was the topic we started off with.
I know. I didn't know if there was anything else we wanted to say about that. Like, had I completely derailed you?
No. You started off, we covered it.
Yeah.
as well.
Keep your eyes peeled for more
Nonsense.
not fireside chats with Alicia and Caleb.
With our low budget.
I will spend more time, if we're going to do this regularly, I will spend far more time doing lighting and all of that. I kind of threw it together today. I should have had that light up higher, so it...
We honestly need to invert anyway. So, with our production value increasing over time, thank you.
Yeah. So I hope everybody has a great weekend, and thank you, Archie, for joining us and participating. And
Yes,
anyone
thank
else who
you.
was watching, thank you. This one will not probably be edited. I don't know what I would
Who
edit
needs
it out.
editing?
But it will
Fine.
go on its own playlist of not fireside chats. That's what I'm going to call it until Caleb comes up with a better name.
BS with Caleb
Archie
and Alicia.
said bye. I'll see you next time.
See you
Go
next
live.
time. See you next
Bye,
Friday.
Archie. Yes.
Friday's
So
a new
next
schedule.
Friday, new schedule. Next Friday at 1 p.m. we will be streaming with me and John and Caleb. And then Fridays from here on out, 1 to 3. Catch us here. And then look for new stuff coming out. Find Caleb on any social things at Dungeon Havoc. And as always, you can also find the Bite Size Buddies at Bite Size Social on everything.
Yep.
And we will see you all later. Thank you. We love
Thank
you.
you. Loves
Bye.
and keep playing. Toodaloo.